So you've got on the far left your monitor tab, which will display your positions, your trade tab, which will display your at the very bottom, your order entry tools. So I just clicked on one of the bid or the ask and the options to show something. I'm going to delete that so we can keep our order bar down at the bottom. So this is just, you type in a ticker symbol. Let's say you want to look at the futures on the S&P 500. Type in your ticker symbol, and that'll bring up all the information on your futures contracts. It'll bring up by default your active futures contracts, the ones that are currently experiencing the most volume before rollover in futures occurs. If you want to see the first 3 months to see other futures contracts or all futures contracts, you can set that up as well. You can actually set up to just look at a single futures contract or look at a spread trade in the form of a calendar type spread where you're buying and selling futures contracts at the same time, but with different expiration dates. Those are spread trades in futures. Down below, if the product you've put in the ticker bar, if you've put in this ticker box, if the options exist on that product, they'll be listed down below. If you don't see them, but you know they're listed, then you just have to expand the menu that says option chain. Okay, you could look at product depth, which is going to give you some interesting information on the options and futures and things like that. I don't use much of this information, but you can look at volatility skews under the options information to see which expirations have higher and lower volatility, which call options, which put options have higher and lower volatility. And this gives it to you in graphical form. You can see this information in other areas of the platform. This just gives it to you in a chart form, which you may find valuable. Options time and sales. So you can look at all the contracts that have traded, that have already traded. You can see a time and sales report, the contracts, the size, the exchange they traded on, the price they traded at. You can see the current market on those, where the underlying is. You can see all the information on all the options that have traded on the vehicle that you have listed in the ticker bar. Option statistics from today, so you can see total trade volume. You can see what Thinkorswim calls a sizzle index. Put call ratios. Most of this information I don't personally use, but if you do, this is where you would find it. Okay. I keep this window pretty straightforward. I like to see the underlying information: bid, ask, net change, last price, the expiration, the active contract, the overall volume, open, high, low. Right? I like to see that, and I like to see all my options listed below. And with your options listed below, you can expand by clicking on this little, horizontal little arrow thing here, and you can expand that particular expiration window. So these are going to be weekly options. You've got monthly options, quarterly options, etc., that will be listed here. Now, one important note while you're looking at any of the options information is that by default, the platform will only show you 4 strike prices by default. And also understand that you can customize this by going under this strike menu, left click on it, and you can expand that to see 6 strike prices. You can expand it to 14 strike prices. You can see all strike prices, or you can customize it by double clicking in that area, highlighting whatever is currently posted in there, and say, I only want to see 23 strike prices. Whatever you want to see, right? So you can customize it or use one of their defaults. It is to my knowledge that the more strike prices you select to be seen, the more your system is going to be taxed because it's more data coming into your machine. So unless you want to see all the strike prices, then I wouldn't suggest traditionally using all. I'd keep it at 14, to 20. If you need to see more, you can always come in here, double click in there, highlight that number, and type in whatever number is going to get you to the strike prices that you want to see in your window. I learned something new, Melanie. Did not know that. Happy to help. So yeah, you can customize that, right? But again, the more data you have coming in, the more it's going to put pressure on your machine. So keep that in mind when you stack up 50 different watch lists here on the left. The more information you have coming into your machine, getting quotes and data, the more memory and more processing power it's going to use. Okay. And there's not a whole lot else that goes on inside of this particular trade tab. Now, some people like to keep their tabs separated to where they don't have to go from monitor tab to trade tab to the chart tab to the analyze tab, and they don't like to switch between tabs. So what you could do is you could say, well, I'm always going to have my trade tab up, but I'm going to put it on another screen that I have over here to my left or my right or above or below. So anytime you see this icon to the far right, which is a transparent square on top, just behind a black filled in square, hover over that. It'll give you a sense of what that does. And this will allow you to detach this layout. So if you detach the layout, it actually brings the layout onto another monitor here. So you can detach the layout over here and move that to another screen wherever you want to go, right? So you can keep all of your information on different screens. So all you got to do, instead of switching from tab to tab, if you have multiple monitors, is look to a different monitor, and you can find your charts on one monitor or a grid of charts on one or two or three monitors. You can see your options analytics on another monitor, all of your positions on another monitor, and your trades and orders that are listed on another monitor. So you can separate that stuff and really customize it if you want to by detaching any one of these or all of them if you want, okay? And that would go for any of these sub tabs as well. So you've got your main tabs, and then you've got sub tabs underneath, okay? Under the Analyze tab, just personal preference, I tend to start all of my trades that I'm building inside the Analyze tab. Why is that? Well, the Analyze tab exposes the ability to analyze risk and reward for all of your options trades, your stock trades if you want, your futures trades, your currency positions, whatever it is you want. You can analyze your trades up, down, sideways, throw all the what-if scenarios at it, determine if it's a great position that you want to take or not, and then you can place that trade from the Analyze tab. So if they just deleted this trade tab altogether from the platform, it wouldn't bother me one bit, because I always start in the Analyze tab. Remember, we always want to analyze before we make any trading decisions. So some cool features of this Analyze tab are you get all of your listed products. So let's say you want to look at, I don't know, you want to look at Boeing, right? So Boeing, you just type in BA. And by the way, if you don't know the ticker symbol for the product that you're looking to analyze, notice that right beside the ticker box itself, the white space, if you have nothing in there, it'll display nothing down below. But if you have nothing in there, you're like, I don't know, I just know the company's name, then you could unpack this by clicking on the little drop-down menu. You can look at any recent symbols that you've populated, any of your current positions, any and all of the futures contracts. So if you just want to just scroll down and look for, you know, cotton futures or dollar index futures, or, you know, you just want to look at futures, or you just want to look at, you know, any of the indexes themselves, or any of the advancer, decliner indexes, the tick, the trend, any of that information, you can see that here. Any forex pairs, and this is going to list a lot in these windows. Anything that you've saved personally in a watch list. But if you don't know what the symbol is, you can always just go ahead and look it up. So say you didn't know the symbol for Boeing, but you know the company's name, right? You type in Boeing, or even if you just start typing BOE, okay, cool, there's Boeing. Then you can go ahead and click on that, and it'll populate it right up there for you. So it's a way to find ticker symbols if you don't know what the symbol actually is, which happens, right? So down below, what's really great about this Analyze tab is under the sub tabs, we'll start on Add Simulated Trades first. Then we'll move our way to these other sub-tabs to the right, okay? So I'm going to start with add simulated trades. So first and foremost, if you don't see your option chain posted listed, you just simply have to unpack it, expand that menu there. Down below, you're going to want to expand the menu, which is known as price slices. This is a section you're going to want to expand. Now, by default, there are 3 different price slices already populated, and you can add price slices, right? And you can delete price slices. All the way on the far left, you'll see some menus. You can delete them, or if you want to start back and go back to the default, this little show actions menu to the far right will allow you to reset this entire little section here, and it'll take it back to default. So by default, these prices are going to always represent the current price of the product that you have listed up here, which is Boeing, current price. And then if price were to be 10% higher than the current price or 10% lower than the current price, you could change it to, you could change that to 15% higher or lower, 5% higher or lower. You could make that whatever you wanted, right? By double clicking on that number, and you say, show me if price moves 18% higher, or actually, because you can't customize it. But you can customize it over here in the drop down menu, okay? Actually, you can customize it. You just have to go the up or down symbol. You can't actually type it in there, okay? But we'll keep it at the default 10%. You can change it from percent to 1 sigma. So this is a sigma. So 1 sigma is 1 standard deviation, or 2 sigma, or 3 sigma, right? So 2 standard deviation, 3 standard deviations. So if you play off of standard deviations, you could change that default. I have no idea what EPR means. You can change it to dollars. So if it moves $10 higher, $1 higher. Again, I always just kind of customize these, and I'll share with you how I customize them, but that's just the default. Also, by default, what this shows you is options Greeks: delta, gamma, theta, and vega. So it shows you the options Greeks, which is obviously going to be very helpful when you're trading options. But this will also show you your delta for a stock position you might be in, or the delta for a futures position you're in or want to explore getting in. We know that options only carry gamma, theta, and vega calculations. Those are time decay and volatility calculations. So if you were to put in ES, okay, S&P futures, and if you were to come up here and click on the ask or the bid, this would establish a simulated trade, okay? So if you were looking at buying the futures contract, you click on the ask, and notice it drops a simulated trade down here, okay? Any other positions that you currently have on the ES will also show up here. But if you don't have a position on the ES right now, then this will just say 0, okay? For instance, if I bring Boeing back up, you can see it brings up all the current positions on Boeing. If I were to add another position by clicking on the ask, it would add it down here, and it would then add all of my current positions in Boeing, plus my new position that I'm looking at potentially adding to Boeing. It would do all of that, and it would calculate my entire position, delta, gamma, theta, and vega. So it would calculate, and it would include, it would tie it all together and create one position, delta, gamma, theta, vega. Also, your profit and loss since the trade was opened, and your profit and loss just for today, okay? And then, of course, if you wanted to reset this information, it resets it back to the default, but then would still keep all of your current information listed below. If you only want to see your current positions, not any of your simulated positions, your what-if positions, you could always take this menu, which is currently says Show All, and say, just hide my simulations and show me my positions, or vice versa. Hide my positions because I want to analyze a brand new trade without this calculator, the price size calculator, including all my current positions. I just want to see my stock position that I'm going to analyze, and then I'll add it to and I'll show everything down the road. So you can customize what this information is giving you here. But if I go back to just hide positions, you'll see that delta is the only column that shows any real value, right? Because the gamma, the theta, and the vega does not apply to to stocks. It doesn't apply to futures. It doesn't apply to forex. That's only options information. So if we had built an option position that, say, theoretically we wanted to go out and buy a $120 call option, I expand the August option menu. I come over here to the $120 strike price. If I click on the ask, it'll set up a buy position down here. If I click on the bid, it'll set up a sell position down here. So keep that in mind: bid, sell, ask, buy. And I could delete the stock position, and now notice that it gives me all of the option delta, gamma, theta, and vega associated with the call option that we're simulating trading down here. If you were to add a long put option at the same strike price and create a straddle type position, then it'll add that straddle. It'll add this down below, and it'll create a net delta calculation, a net gamma, a net theta, a net vega, and a net profit and loss based upon what if. And here's the cool part. What if prices go from 123.60 up to, and here's where you could have an outlook that, hey, I expect prices to go to 145 because that's what the chart is telling me. But what if prices go below my 120 stop loss, right? So here's where I use the price slices to set up, okay, if I already like this Boeing position and I know I want to buy a call, or I know I want to buy a put, let's say I just want to buy a call, or let's just say I just want to buy the stock, right? And I want to buy, 100 shares of it or 200 shares of it, right? What happens if price goes to 120, right? I know that I'm going to lose some money. Well, how much? Well, I could get my calculator out, right? Get my phone out, or I could just plug in the price at which I'm going to have my stop loss placed. And this would tell me I'm risking $762. It's changing because the price of the stock is changing. That I would risk $754 on 200 shares. Well, if that's too much, I can just reduce my position size and say, what if it was 100 shares? Oh, it tells me I'd risk $373. Well, what if my risk tolerance is $300? Then I can just reduce my position size here. And I say, okay, if I reduce my position size from 100 down to, say, 60, that gets me below $300. If I trade 75, that gets me just below. If I trade 80, that gets me right under $300 plus a little commission if there is any. And this can tell me how many shares that I should be trading based upon my personal risk tolerance without having to get the calculator out every single time, because this will calculate for us. What if prices go to 145? This tells us what our reward potential would be. Okay. If you have current positions, this tells you what your reward potential is. This tells you what your reward is currently, but not only tell you because we have this set to current price, but what your reward potential would be if prices go down or up to the prices that you've customized in this left-hand column. So for those of us who have multiple targets on different positions, you would want to add a price slice, and you could add all of these price slices, different custom targets, and you could say, what if price goes here, here, or here? Tell me what my P&L would be. What if price goes down to here, here, or here? Tell me what my custom P&L would be. And this is a great place to analyze all the things that could happen to your trade before you actually get into it, okay? Kevin asked the question, so even though you're in the option chain, you can make a futures trade by just clicking the buy or the ask. Absolutely, right? So I'll go back and repeat that. Let me reset all these slices. Absolutely. If you're up here and you want to type in ES, right? Obviously, you see all the options positions on the ES futures contract here. But under the futures expanded menu, you can see the active contract. You can say, okay, I'm going to click on the ask. It'll set up a, oh, do it again. Why is it not? Oh, because I'm hiding simulations. Show all. Okay. Let me delete that again. Make sure you show all down here. Click on the ask if you want to simulate buying it. And then you would say, okay, here's my position. I've got a position delta of $50 per 1 point move in the S&P futures. That's the multiplier. And you could come over here to your chart and say, hey, I have a stop, I have a target, I have an entry price. Type in your stop, entry, and target, and you can calculate. Let's say your stop is below 28.50, and you have a target at 29.80. It's arbitrary numbers. You can type that in, and it'll tell you what your risk reward is expected to be on this futures trade if you take it. Is that what you were asking, Kevin? Which is really nice for making sure you've got the right position size before you get into the trade. If it were a micro ES position, you just come over here and you add the M, and you can say, okay, I'm going to trade this in the micro instead. Okay, type in your stop, your entry, your target. Micro ES has no options, so they're not going to be listed. But if I click on the ask, it drops in a micro position. Our delta on a micro is $5 per point. And then you could type in your same, 28.50, 29.80, and you can see what your risk reward would be based upon your target, your stop, and entry price. Really, really helpful because it gives us a sense of, should I be making this trade? Can I afford the risk? Is the reward worth the risk? And it's a really easy way to calculate everything that can possibly happen before you ever even get in. Now, of course, we could use one of these, but, I like using this. It's a lot more convenient, and it stores this information. That's what I like about it, right? It stores this. So if I keep this on the micro ES and I go back to Boeing, okay, where I've reset all my slices, and then I go back to MES, notice it keeps this information. With a calculator, it doesn't keep it. So it keeps it until you reset it. So if you're ever coming back to this position and say you've got a position on the MES, you can see where your original target and your stop and your entry price was, because it'll store it. Even if you close the platform and log back in, it stores it. And you can see is your position, how your position is evolving over time. Okay. Now, some other features that you're going to want to get very familiar with over here. Let's go back to, say, Boeing for a second. And let's hide current position, just go with simulations, okay? Let's pretend that you want to build an option trade, okay? Let's pretend that, and I need to see more strike prices, you want to build a 120, right? 120 by 130 bull call spread, right? I'm not going to go into what a bull call spread is, but it's basically a position where you're going to buy one call option and sell another call option against it. It's a vertical spread, so it's different strike prices, the same exact expiration. So you would come in here and you would say, how do I build this bull call spread? You could either right-click on the option that you want to buy, which is your anchor position in a bull call spread. Right-click, analyze a buy or a debit type trade, and it lists a whole bunch of standard type positions. If you're looking for a call credit spread, then you'd be looking at selling a credit spread. You could create alerts, a lot of right-click functionality in the platform. Over here, though, what you could do is right-click, analyze buy a vertical spread. Now, what you'll notice is if you do that, it uses contiguous strikes. It uses the very next strike price as your offsetting leg. So the leg that you clicked on to create the vertical spread is your anchor. That's the one you're buying. And the one that's offsetting the position is the one you're selling. It's going to use contiguous strikes. And if you do that, then you'll just have to widen the spread a little bit. If you're already anticipating needing to widen that spread to 130, then you could do that here. Everything can be just adjusted through the drop-down menu, okay? Or, let me delete that. a really handy feature, which not a lot of people know about, is if I already know I want to set up a 120 by 130 or 120 by 140, I click on the anchor leg on the ask because that's the one I want to buy. And all it does is set up a single order down below. And then I go to the bid of the one that I want to sell. We'll call it the 130s. I use my finger. I hold the control key down on my keyboard, hold it down, click on the bid, and notice that it added the short leg to the long leg and created the same vertical spread. Only now I don't have to use the drop-down menus to adjust the strike price that I want to maybe get to. If I already know I want a 10-point wide spread, I might as well go straight to it, right? That's just holding the control key down on your keyboard. Now, in this position, it nets out your debit, your expected debit price. It nets out your delta, all your Greeks here, and your net P&L based upon how you customize your price slices. So this will allow you to customize, again, stop, entry, target. That's how I use this for any option trade that you're analyzing. And then any adjustment you make to the expiration date, the contract size, the type of spread. So if you wanted to adjust this and make this a diagonal or horizontal or butterfly or straddle or strangle or iron condor, whatever you wanted to do, it'll automatically recalculate everything in this above price slices area to give you your expected P&L at the prices that you customized on the left. So it does all that adjusting for us, which is really great. Let's see. And then, of course, if you are expecting a different price, you could adjust your debit. If you adjust your debit, notice that it will change your prices and the effect up here, okay? Now, another thing that happens in this window is if you're looking at this position, you're saying, okay, I'm looking at this bull call spread here, and I want to analyze the risk profile, the visual version of my risk reward. Risk graphs is what we call them, right? They actually give you that under the sub tab under Analyze. And so if you click on Risk Profile, it gives you the risk graph of your position that you have down below. So you can see where your max loss would be. This horizontal line represents our max loss in a bull call spread. The horizontal line represents our max profit, anything above the zero line. And this is not an example of how to use risk graphs. You guys know as pro members that we have a whole series on how to hand draw and build and use risk graphs in our options curriculum. This is just where can you access them in the Thinkorswim platform, okay? And so you can move this around, right? You can center it by just clicking anywhere inside the graph itself and move it around to center it. You could expand it by left clicking and holding and dragging along the horizontal axis, which represents the stock price going up or down. You cannot scale it by clicking the same way on the vertical axis. It doesn't scale up or down, but you can, kind of modify how you see it by the horizontal. And anytime, again, you make any changes down here in your simulated trade, it will make those changes up top in this window. You can grab these vertical dotted lines, these dashed lines here. What do they represent? They represent where the price slices are down below. So notice that if I change this 135.89 to 145 and hit return, it changes where that price slice is, okay? You could also grab the price slice by hovering over that and moving that around yourself. And once you let go of it, it'll change it, right? It'll change it there. And notice it automatically changes it down here as well. So in the price slices, if I'm adjusting this by dragging it around, it's changing it down below. What it's also changing is all of your Greeks and your P&L. So again, this gives you that indication of if prices go up or if prices go down, what would be my expected P&L? Great way to understand your options positions. And by default, this will always, let me reset those. This will always show you an expiration risk graph, which, by the way, is this line here. This mine is in green, right? So that's your expiration risk graph. And then the one that's in purple here is our real-time risk profile, real time. So right now, and it's going to change every day. Those of you who understand option trading know that this purple line will evolve every day. Well, what if we wanted to simulate the evolution of our option trade and we wanted to see what would happen if we were, going to recognize prices going higher or lower, not based off of today's date, but what about another date in the future? Because we know time decay affects an option position. I could pick any day in the future and say, what if by, May, I'll just come down here to this calendar here under simulated trades. What if by May 20th, what's happening? Well, it does affect this section down here. It doesn't affect the risk graph up here. What affects the risk graph up here is this. Okay, so you have two calendars. The calendar down below will affect your price slice information. The calendar above will start to affect your risk profile. Okay, you could also go forward and say, show me 4 days in the future, right? Show me, and you can see the evolution of your position over 4 different periods of time, which is really neat. So where I started to learn about options position evolution is by pressing buttons in this window. This window is probably one of the most valuable windows. It's analyze risk profile. It's probably one of the most valuable windows in the entire platform because it allows you to throw all what if situations at any option position. And you can see multiple expiration dates down here, right, to the bottom left. Each risk profile will represent a different date in time. So it'll calculate your P&L based upon where you hold your cursor. And it's a great way to learn the evolution of an options position. And so you can adjust all of that up here at the very top. Expiration. You can look at just your single current position right now. You could look at expiration, just your current position, plus 1 expiration, which is generally all we're really going to need because in a position like this, the expiration is the exact same date, okay? You can look at how you want to look at this. So right now we're looking at our P&L. If you wanted to look at the delta curve, you could look at the delta curve of your position. If you wanted to look at the Vega curve, how volatility moving, how price of the stock going up and down is going to affect your volatility exposure, right? That's your Vega exposure. There's so many different things that you could learn about options from just pressing buttons in this section. One thing that this also allows us to do is if you come all the way down here, this is a hidden menu, all the way down here to the bottom right-hand corner. Give me an indication in the chat box, guys. How important is looking at implied volatility and the expectations of implied volatility when building options, trades, and options outlooks? How important is it? Melanie says huge. Petra says vital. Very, very important. And so anybody who's ever made an option trade before without looking at volatility has uncovered a situation where you might have been right on the directional outlook of the stock, but still lost money or not made as much money as you should have because volatility actually moved against the position, even though your delta moved with the position. And so we want to make sure that we understand the effect of implied volatility, and we use an indicator to understand where volatility is now relative to where it has been, to understand the future expectations of implied volatility. But we want to know on our position, what if volatility changes while we're in the position? How does that affect our P&L? So down here, you can actually click on this little gear in the bottom right-hand corner. Again, we're still under Analyze. Add Simulated Trades Risk Profile has this little cog. If you click on it, it exposes a volatility adjustment number here, and right now it's set to 0, so it's not going to, no volatility adjustment. So basically, what if volatility rose 20 percentage points? 20 percentage points. Hit return. It will show you the net effect that Vega will have, which is volatility exposure, on this option position by adjusting volatility. And it'll show you in the P&L here, if prices hit your stop or your target, which you would have customized over here on the left, how volatility going up 20 points would affect your position. Or if volatility went down 20 points, how would volatility affect your position? And it's really great to just kind of, again, play around with different numbers and different configurations in this window, because it can really help you understand how your option position will evolve based on ever changing, and here's the fun part, ever changing information and data that's coming at our option or futures or stock position every single moment of every single day. So down here, you can uncover more parameters. You can have some fun with this whole section here. You can add price slices to the charts, etc. Okay. So this is probably, again, one of the most valuable windows to play around with and press buttons in the entire platform. So have fun in the risk profile tab there. You can look at probability analysis, which is kind of based upon volatility. What is the probability of the stock landing above or below a certain price based on implied volatility? So you've got probability analysis tools built in here. You've got economic data. So you can look at unemployment data, for instance, and kind of see what's going on there, read a lot of economic reports. ThinkBack, which is a fun platform. This allows you to actually go back and say, hey, I wonder on Boeing, not that, I'm using Boeing for any other reason. It's the first one that comes to my mind right now. I wonder on Boeing, if I go back to, check this out. If I go back to January 8th, 2020, I wonder where the stock price was, and I wonder where all the options were priced back on April 8th, 2020. This keeps an ongoing daily record. It's a closing record, so it's not intraday. It's just the closing price on that day. It keeps a record of all the closing options prices. It keeps a record of all the closing stock prices. You might say, well, what good is that? Well, you might say, well, had I had set up a bull call spread on the 8th of January of this year, had I had set up a bull call spread, and then, at that time, and then let's say that 3 weeks had gone by, and I go fast forward to January 30th, where the stock was at 331 on January 8th. Now the stock on January 30th is at 323, so the stock price has gone down. How would that have affected a bull call spread that I would have built back on that date? How would that have affected my profit and loss? How would that position have evolved? Well, you can see delta, theta. You can actually customize this by looking at the cog over here and adding other option Greeks. And you can say, if I would have made that trade, I would have lost $125 because of what Boeing did from January. Now we're going all the way back. We can look at the chart down here and see back in January, which is right here. Okay. So here's a yellow line that represents your position, value here, your position. So we started out the position on January 8th, and then as the position evolved, we can see on the 30th, which is where we went to. Here's January 30th. We can see our profit and loss up here, but we can also see if we would have held on to this position, how would this position have evolved over time? That's what this yellow line down here does. This is your simulated position from way back in January. So this gives you a way to backtest option strategies based upon the closing price of every option on every stock, on every futures contract. You could do this with futures, stocks, whatever. You could backtest, and by using this ThinkBack function. Now, the ThinkBack function doesn't give you intraday pricing. It's only end of day closing pricing, but it does give you a pretty solid representation of what would have happened if you had established a position back on a certain date and time. Okay, so a great way to backtest stuff. You could look at the fundamentals of companies here. So if you look at Boeing, this will give you all the fundamental data on Boeing right in the platform. So you don't really have to use Yahoo Finance or FinViz or MarketWatch or whatever, website you use to look at fundamental information. This will grab it all and populate it right inside your platform if you use fundamentals. Also in earnings, right? It'll go into, if you type in Boeing for earnings, it'll give you some information relative to Wall Street expectations, what actually happened, what the at the money straddle or strangle, or what happens to implied versus historical volatility. So I haven't really used this tab very much. I just know it's there. But I know it's there. So Melanie says, I like Think Back. It helps you track up to 50 or something trades. Yeah. So I've never gotten all the way up to 50. So if it limits you at 50, that's a lot. But I usually just do one at a time to kind of show what if scenarios. Another thing that you could do for what if scenarios as well, if you like the idea of practicing, but with intraday pricing. Thinkorswim does this really neat thing where you can go into their on-demand platform. So all the way in the top right-hand corner, just under application settings, you can go to on-demand. And what this does is this allows you to go back in time, days, weeks, months. I don't know how far back it'll let you go, but pretty far. And it's basically like a DVR, like your TiVo box. It's recording all the data from all the markets every day, and it's keeping a record of every transaction every day. So if you wanted to go back and practice trading, gold, for instance, or micro gold contracts, you could go back to any date in time and say, okay, let's go back to, up here in the far right-hand corner, let's go back to March 3rd, pick a random day at 6:30 in the morning. I'm on the West Coast, so that's the open of the market. Where was gold trading? Okay. And this will take you back, gold futures, March 3rd. Let's go back here. Let's go back, March 3rd. Okay. You can see all the options prices from March 3rd. On demand tells you that if you want to trade and pretend to trade, you can do this on demand. So for instance, gold, let's go GC, and it's still buffering right up here. You can see on the top left, it's pre-buffering. Takes a minute because it's a lot of data going back at that time. Okay. And all we did was go back to March 3rd, just pick a random day. This is fun. Okay. Now we haven't set up our charts yet, so our charts are looking a little nasty, in my opinion. This is also real-time data. Okay. Once it buffers, though, which is taking an extremely long time, maybe because I'm live streaming right now, it's taking a little extra long. But what'll happen is it'll show the data. Yeah, it's because I'm on Zoom and it's taking up a lot of data. But what this would show is, hey, listen, gold is trading at X price, and if I wanted to go ahead and simulate making a trade on this, I could go under the trade tab, the analyze tab. I could build positions. I can simulate those trades, and I can actually make trades. I can go in here to this active trader button. So we've got a lot of tabs on the far right on our chart menu, right? So I just went to charts, and I could pull up a menu that says active trader, which pulls up our matrix. And I could practice. I could go ahead and say, what if I wanted to buy this contract? And now this will tell you it's an on-demand, it's a virtual order. If I send it, notice I heard the little chime. Now I'm in the trade. So if I go to the monitor tab, I'm in the trade. It's not real money, so I'm virtually trading it, right? But then, unlike a normal paper or virtual trading environment where you'd have to sit here and wait days upon days to see how this position played out, you could say, you know what, now that I'm in, what happened 4 hours from now, right? What happened if I zoom forward 4 hours from now? I can see that prices are higher, fantastic. And when I go over here, when it's done buffering again, it'll show your net P&L. So what's really cool about the on-demand functionality is it's got all the same functionality as the main platform, but you can trade in real time using historical pricing, and you can actually make trades, set your stops, set your targets, see how things would have played out, test your strategy, test your rules without having to wait in real time. And you can see now that it's done buffering with gold up here at 1643, we got in way down here. You can see this shows a profit of about 4 grand based upon what actually happened on gold on that day. Another great way to back test and forward test your strategy. Really neat. It's an on-demand feature, right? So to get out of on-demand, you click on the on-demand and it'll take you back into your real platform, right? So we left off under the Analyze tab, okay? Any questions on the Analyze tab? Again, great place to build and test strategies and all that fun stuff. Any questions there? Are we good to go? Excellent. Next, Scan tab.